So you should come in. I mean, hopefully, I think I've not pressed the button there, guys, but you should come in muted. If you're not muted, either mute yourself or try not to spend the next 45 minutes coughing and barking at your dog and all sorts. So welcome to the final, we think, I've got my fingers crossed a little bit here, but the final LMPG expert lock-in webinar for this year, for 2023 already. And guess what? We're talking about 2024. So my name is Anthony Bailey Grice. I'm the managing director of LMPG. I've got Laura with me today.
Hello.
Hello, says Laura. And for GDPR's sake, this webinar is being recorded. So if you do not want to be on the recording, then turn your video off or mute yourself or whatever it is, anonymize yourself in some way, otherwise you'll be on the website. Or if you do want to be on the recording, like our good friend Rory down there, what you can do is stick your company background so that you're getting a bit of free promo there, Rory, and I don't blame you. What an opportunity, eh? So we're talking to Scott Marshall of Roma Finance today in a talk that is, I would say, rather audaciously called "Volatility Creates Opportunity." It's a spin on a phrase that kind of makes the rounds every few years in the property industry because we're often told when interest rates are down, okay, brilliant, there's loads of opportunity here. Now interest rates have come back up, brilliant, there's loads of opportunity here. Whatever happens, whether it's good, bad, it's always bad if you watch the news, there's loads of opportunity. So what we're going to get from Scott today, I hope, and this is not a guarantee, I just hope we're going to get it, is some specifics of actually what does that mean. So Scott is the founder of Roma Finance, an award-winning, as of last week, award-winning commercial finance provider. I think bridging finance, but the award was in commercial finance. Who is positioned to kind of give us a lender's point of view of what looks like a deal that's going to stack up and what looks like a deal that's going to fall down, and where to find those deals throughout 2024 and beyond, or even 2023 if you're feeling particularly proactive during Christmas. So look, it's a long rambling introduction. I'm not sure how much I said and how much I should have said, but Scott, I'm going to throw it over to you to kind of introduce yourself again, and let's get this show on the road.
Brilliant, Anthony. Thank you very much indeed for the warm introduction. It's good to be here. It's good to meet everybody. So, as Anthony said, I'm the founder and managing director at Roma Finance. We offer development finance, we offer bridging finance, and we also offer buy-to-let mortgages. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is a number of things, and hopefully you will come to your own conclusion at the end of this that volatility does indeed create opportunity for yourselves and your family and those that you are connected with. So I'm going to talk about two different things. I'm going to talk to you, number one, about the economy. I'll give you my view. It's not a company view, it's my personal view as to where things are at, where things are going to be over the next 12 to 18 months and maybe even beyond, and how, as a property investor, you can identify opportunities. And then I'm then going to touch on the due diligence that you should do in order for you to help you choose the right lender to partner with for your project. So there's lots and lots of lenders, bridging lenders, buy-to-let lenders, development finance lenders in the market. So how do you disseminate between good and bad? What should you be looking for? What are the questions you should be asking in order for you to choose a partner for your project? Okay, so let's talk first of all about the economic climate, and I'll give you a kind of high-level overview as to what is going on at the moment. So if we look at what's happened over the past 2 years, it's no surprise we've seen interest rates go up by 500%. We've seen that The cost of living has started to bite. We've seen that things are costing more, labour, materials, fuel, everything is costing more. But what's actually really going on right now? And if I look at where we are at as an economy, we're starting to see the seeds of the sort of seeds of change. And what I mean by that is there is a slowdown in leisure and hospitality. I mean, ignoring London, which because London's own economy, its own right. But if we outside of London, we're seeing that leisure and hospitality sectors are slowing down. Restaurants are slowing down. We're seeing that construction, house builders are slowing down. Our customers, for the first time in 5 years, certainly 3 years, if not longer, 5 years maybe, our customers are having contractors, chippies, brickies, plumbers, sparkies knock on their door and say, can we have some work, please? Because they're being laid off by the major house builders. That gives them better negotiating power. We're seeing that building materials merchants are selling less product, which means that our customers can negotiate better to buy better for the projects that they're funding. So we're seeing that, and interestingly, it's not just in the construction sector. Last week, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, they announced redundancies. KPMG, for all of their 12,000 staff, this week they've announced a pay freeze. And what the Bank of England has been trying to do is they've been trying to use interest rates to slow down the economy. So if we think back to what was going on, why they raised interest rates, first of all, they raised interest rates because they felt that we were in a demand, there was a supply problem, okay, and demand was greater than supply. So because demand was greater than supply, they raised interest rates in order to slow things down. Initially, because things were so hot, what happened was companies just raised their prices because they knew that people could pay more, and because the demand was there. But what's happened now is they've raised interest rates, like yank to raise interest rates, and all of a sudden, now we're starting to feel the pain. So mortgage arrears, residential mortgage arrears are starting to tick up. Buy-to-let mortgage arrears are ticking up a bit more. So buy-to-let arrears, mortgage arrears are 4 times what they are in the residential space at the moment. Not unduly concerning for either sector, but they are just 4 times higher than what residential mortgage arrears are. So that's what's going on the mortgage side. We're seeing that unsecured debt is going up. We're seeing that amount of savings are being depleted. So there's an erosion of savings, unsecured debt's going up, residential mortgage arrears are going up, buy-to-let mortgage arrears are going up by more. And that's why we're seeing a flatlining and a slight reduction in house prices because of the Bank of England raising base rates. Lenders are stress testing more people that want to go and make that move, that jump, and they can't afford it. They can only afford to borrow less, which means that they can pay less, which means that they can offer less. And we're seeing down valuations on mortgage valuations, which means that lenders will lend less based on both affordability and also on loan to values. So everything feels like we're kind of in 2024, certainly in the first half of 2024, we're going to start to see evidence that comes out from a data perspective that we are in recession. We have seen that so far, I think the last recorded GDP, we were 0.2% up. But we were flatlining, we were up on value, but we were flatlining on volume of goods sold. The reason for this is because rents have gone up, because mortgages have gone up, because cost of living has gone up. Therefore, people's discretionary spending has gone down because the just paying for things to live normally, and it's costing them more. It's taking more disposable cash out away from what they can spend, and therefore people are not able to spend on luxuries like eating out, restaurants, and doing the house up. And to be fair, they've done their houses up over the past 3 years because there's been such an opportunity to go and do that, because they haven't had much, people haven't had much else to spend their money on during COVID. There've been, lots of money coming in, people have been scribbling money away, and now the savings are being eroded. So if we paint a picture of actually what's going on, we're going to start to see reasons why the Bank of England are likely, very likely, to have to start reducing interest rates in the new year, because the picture, even though the government will tell you that everything is fine and we're doing much better than than they thought, actually there's still 1 million more residential mortgages and buy-to-let mortgages that are going to come off fixed rates next year, and people are going to get even more of a payment shock, which is going to take even more money out of people's pockets and reduce the amount of discretionary spending that people have got available. And when things start to go bad and things start to quieten down and the recession starts to bite and it's all around, everything will all be around the jobless figures. So once the Bank of England starts to see that unemployment is going up and is rising materially, that's when they will have no choice but to reduce interest rates in order to stimulate spending, in order to stimulate the economy to get things back on track. So we are in a period now where interest rates, certainly in my opinion, have peaked and are likely towards the beginning of Q2, end of Q2, so the end of the first half of next year, are likely to come down, and I think they're likely to come down quickly from a personal perspective in order to re-stimulate the economy. So if we look now, right now, people are scared to do business because they're scared to take on property projects because there's just a lot of uncertainty. I've given you a picture of what's going on nationally, but if we look at what's going on internationally, we're also in very uncertain times. We've seen what's going on in the Middle East. And if we just take the Middle East and we just imagine a disaster, a doomsday scenario with what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, you've got Israel, which is allied with the UK, which is allied with America. On its border, you've got Syria, which is now a Russian-backed regime. On the other side of Syria, you've got Iran, and Iran has got its tentacles it funds Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is to the north of Israel. It funds Hamas, which is obviously in Gaza, which is causing problems, as we know, we've all seen the news. So you've got Russia and Iran next to each other with Israel on its border. America's moved 2 warships, the Eastern Mediterranean. We know that Iran and Russia are close. We know that Russia and China are close. We know that China and North Korea are close. With the UK's moved warships over there. So there's an awful lot of talk at the moment around de-escalation. And this is all about really avoiding more of an international global conflict. Okay, so that situation, even though it appears to be calming down with what's going on, if we look on an international perspective, the risk of a global conflict has not actually fallen away yet, because again, the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen are firing missiles into Israel, which the Americans are shooting down. And also you've got the Iranian-backed proxies that are attacking American air bases in Yemen and in Saudi. So there are some real challenges internationally which could cause further instability from a global perspective. So we've got uncertainty on a national basis, we've got uncertainty on an international basis, and therefore people understandably are not making investment decisions. So if we take the major house builders here, they're slowing down, they're laying people off, they're slowing down what they're building. That is causing all the kind of ancillary services and labour and materials going into that sector to become more available, which means that our customers right now are able to negotiate better day rates with their contractors because there's less demand for their services. They're able to buy better from building material suppliers because there's less demand for their products right now. So as we stand at the moment, our customers are able to build better. Now, if we then take the uncertainty around where GDVs are going to be in 12 months' time, in 18 months' time, in 24 months' time, and don't forget, potentially we have a change of government in 12 months' time, which also causes further uncertainty, then there is currently less competition for projects, because a project can take 12, 18, 24 months to come to fruition. And therefore there's uncertainty about what the products that our customers are creating, what they're going to be worth in 12 to 18 to 24 months time. Okay. And therefore our customers are having to negotiate, and in fact, they're able to negotiate better on the purchase prices because of the uncertainty. And what we say to our customers, just as a rule of thumb, is imagine that your end values of the properties that you're buying, the projects that you're doing, the developments that you're creating, imagine that the end values are at pre-COVID levels. Okay? It's unlikely that property prices are going to fall that far. Okay, but just imagine that we're at pre-COVID levels in terms of property prices. That's number one. Number two, don't imagine that you're able to buy better for materials and you're able to buy labor better. Imagine you're paying the rates where they were at 6 months ago. Okay, so factor those in terms of what it's going to cost you to build or renovate or refurb. Okay, so that's number two. And therefore, when you are putting in offers for property, you can negotiate harder. There's less competition. You're at pre-COVID levels in terms of the end values, but you're at yesterday's build costs. Okay, so and because it's becoming much more of a buyer's market rather than a seller's market in this window of opportunity now, actually you will find that vendors are willing or more willing to do deals. Does that make sense? Okay,
you've not painted a hugely pretty picture there, Scott. I mean,
no, absolutely, but you do your best business in a counter-cyclical environment. So when everybody is selling, that's your time to buy.
So can we talk about house prices a little bit there, because you mentioned it toward the end.
Yeah.
So
by the way, I haven't finished the presentation, but I just wanted to kind of make a pause to make sure that people have kind of understood.
No, we're all suitably depressed. There's a lot happening now. In fact, I will ask one question, and we can move on to the next bit. And hopefully, if you're going to cover it in a second, do let me know. There was a shining light in the middle of June next year, where you said that's where you expect that interest rates are going to start to tail off a little bit. Well, now, just a counterpoint to that.
The flip of that, Anthony, sorry to interrupt you. The flip of that is once interest rates start to come down, okay, there will be more confidence that will come back. There'll be more competition that will come back in the market, and therefore you'll see that prices will start to rise again.
So that's the end of the window. It's now until June.
I think there's a window now.
Okay.
Because even though base rates are high at the moment, so the finance is going to cost you more at the moment because base rates are higher. The reality is, I'll give you an example. The reality is that the amount that you're going to save on your purchase price, because you can negotiate now harder, okay, should more than outweigh the extra you will pay on finance. So just by way of example, let me give you an extreme example, if I can, Anthony. So we had a transaction with a customer who was who negotiated to buy a property pre-Liz Truss's budget for £600,000. Okay, so we're paying 600, and they had £200,000 in cash. So we were lending 400,000 on day one. The project was going to cost this customer £250,000. Okay, and we were funding the £400,000 of the £600,000 purchase price, and we were also funding the full refurb cost of 250. Okay, so if you take it from the customer's perspective, purchase price 600, refurb cost 250. That stands the customer in, from a capital perspective, at £850,000. Okay, the GDV was £1.2 million. The customer would have made 350 grand, and from our perspective, we were doing 400 on day one plus 250. We were at 650 on a GDV of 1.2 million. Okay, so the deal it's stacked. Liz Truss's budget comes out, okay, and the disaster that it was, this customer turned round to the vendor and said, I will complete this deal within 7 days, but I'll pay 450. Okay, so he had the guts, the trading mentality, the wherewithal, the confidence. I was going to use a different phrases, but I'm being polite. He had the guts to go and offer 450 and the confidence to go and do the deal. He still had £200,000 in cash. So from his perspective, the customer, 450 purchase price, 250 renovation cost, stands him in at 700 on a GDV that's still £1.2 million. From our perspective, we were in on day one at 250. Now instead of 400 plus the 250 refurb cost, we were in at 500 on a GDV of 1.2. So even if that GDV would have fallen from 1.2 down to a million, still making money, same margin. Okay, so but he didn't. In the end, he sold it for £1.2 million. So even though the finance cost him more, the amount that he saved on the purchase meant that it put the extra cost of the finance, it was buttons. It was irrelevant because he made so much more through being able to buy better.
Okay.
And so again, when times are tougher, when times are more volatile, that's why volatility, again, in my opinion, creates opportunity. And I think that if we fast forward to where we're going to be in 12 months' time, where we're likely, not definitely, but we're likely to see a change in government, it's my view that housing is going to be one of the issues that will be front and centre of the next election, because we've got a chronic shortage of rental property, we've got a chronic shortage of properties that people can buy. House prices are high, and that's because of the shortage. So I think that what a Labour government will be looking for is they will be looking to stimulate the economy through construction, through building a new type of social housing, a new type of council estate. And I think that the reason why they are kind of dipping their toe in the water and dropping hints around green belts is because you tend to have expensive houses around green belts. Green belts tend to kind of wrap around sort of urban areas and cities. And what I think will happen is that Labour will come forward with a plan in order to restructure and potentially in certain areas eliminate the green belts because it's useful land to build on. They will invest in new type of social housing, new type of council estate in those areas, as well as new towns, together with the infrastructure. But ultimately, we're going to build our way out of a flatlining economy, because there's also all the ancillaries that will come from it, and the way in which the OBR and the credit agencies will view this is that actually, I know the government will be borrowing, but they'll be borrowing to invest and borrowing to grow, and that is always a positive thing. But the impact of that investment in infrastructure, the investment in housing, is likely to be that demand for labour will go up again, demand for materials will go up again, which will lead to higher costs of building, higher costs of materials, higher costs of labour. Okay, and therefore, again, coming back to what I was saying, I think there is a window to trade, which is now when nobody else is.
Okay. Yeah, no, I see the logic. It's as you mentioned, I can't think of the exact term, so I'm just going to use the phrase that comes to mind. It takes some bollocks, because
you said it. I didn't. I was thinking it, but I didn't say it.
If everyone's going one direction, even if the case of your customer that put in an offer of 450 for a 650 property, I guess it works in the current climate, but it also takes a little bit of luck. It takes a little bit of persuasion to say, look, this is the best you're going to get, and know that it's the truth.
Look, developing property is a margin. It's like any other business. It's like any other business. It's about margin. Okay? If you can buy well, you can sell well. In any business, in any industry, in any sector, if you buy well, you can sell well. And in the current climate, you can buy better, you can buy well, and because costs are going down, labor costs are going down, materials costs are going down, because you can particularly with LMPGs helping, particularly, you can buy better. Okay, so you can buy better, you can build better, you can refurb better, you can construct better, you can renovate better, and it is unlikely right now, because of the chronic shortage in property, that GDVs are going to fall that far. Okay,
Yeah,
once we start building our way out of the current climate, and there is a lot more demand, sorry, a lot more increased supply of property and lower value property because it's more affordable, we will start to see that dynamic shifting.
One economic indicator that I've picked up on, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot of members in the webinar today that will recognize this, is that these property meetings. So we go to property meetings around the country, PIN, PPN, independence, that kind of thing. When you start to see electricians, plumbers, tradespeople in that room kind of vying for business, you know that, you know, times are a bit tough. Because otherwise, when there's loads of business, they don't bother turning up. But when you go there and you meet one of every kind, really, you think, okay, now it's going to be a good time to do a bit of development, to do a refurb, because the labour's right there.
Yeah, and look, from our perspective at the moment with the projects that we're funding, we've been seeing for the past few months that our customers are not using the contingencies that they put in place. Okay, because they're able to effectively build cheaper. Okay,
let's carry on.
Let's carry on. Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So if we look at what is actually so some of the kind of opportunities and where to build, what to do. And this is what this slide is about. We are still seeing that hybrid working is more and more popular. So if I take, you know, my company as an example, we employ 55 people in Roma, but our office only has capacity for 45, 46 people. Okay, and the way in which we're working at the moment is it's compulsory to work in the office if you're not field based. It's compulsory to work in the office 2 days a week, and 3 days is your choice where you want to work. And so the way that we've done it is we rotate those 2 days for the different teams through the week, so that we don't need to go and spend more money on a bigger office. Okay, now there's lots of companies that are behaving like we're behaving, and what that means is that there is more vacant office space than there was pre-COVID, and that's still the case now. That's number one. Hybrid working is reducing demand for office working, office space, and that means that generally speaking, office space tends to be in good locations, and there's a great opportunity to convert office space to residential. That's opportunity number one. Opportunity number two is, again, we've seen how the high street has been changing. So retail space, the evolution of the high street is that retailers have been shutting down. So local authorities need to get people back into town centres in order to attract retailers to those areas. So the forward-thinking local authorities are investing in regeneration of town centres, city centres, etc. I'll come on to the 15-minute city in a second. But what we say to our customers is follow the money. Where you see that local authorities are investing in the town centres, and they are likely to want to increase the amount of residential that's there in the town centres. in order that footfall increases, in order that high street retail properties can be repurposed much more as leisure, so coffee shop, restaurants, bars, etc. Okay, so we're doing and we're seeing an awful lot of commercial to resi conversions, retail shops. We're seeing a lot of mixed use schemes where there might have been a retail downstairs with sort of storage space or vacant space often above. That's ripe for converting to residential. And one of the things that we are, I think, going to see very shortly is that where people are wanting to convert a house into 2 flats, you won't need planning consent, or you're converting commercial into resi, you won't need planning consent. This is going to become more and more prevalent because, again, this is a great way for local authorities to reinvigorate, reinvest, and reshape their town centres. So if you follow the money, if you see where local authorities are investing in pedestrianisation, and they're doing up the pedestrian areas, and they're doing up town centres, that's where you should pioneer, because you'll be able to buy better because there's still low demand. But as that area gets improved and gentrified, and there's investment, so you'll see capital growth in those areas, and also that will then attract restaurants, it will attract retail, coffee shops, etc., as those areas get reinvigorated. Now, in the bigger cities, so we go back, sorry, before I go into the cities, if I look at town centres, one example is, again, if I'm from the northwest, one example is Altrincham, one example is Macclesfield, one example is Lee, one example is Hale. There's an awful lot of investment in those small town centres and kind of suburban type villages where they're trying to bring people in order to regenerate those town centres. So 15 years ago, Altrincham was dead. It is now absolutely thriving, and values have just done that. Now, 15-minute cities. One of the big things that the big local authorities, such as Manchester, are doing is they're trying to create a 15-minute city, which is that everything should be, if you live in a town centre, city centre, everything should be within 15-minute walk of where you are based. So schools, hospitals, doctors, dentists, supermarkets, everything should be within 15-minute walk, which means that you do not need a car anymore if you're living in town centres. We've seen it in London, and we're seeing it, going to see it in other city centres around the country. So again, the 15-minute city and investing in facilities around there, that's how we're going to start to see that our lives are going to change. And because of I suppose the levelling up agenda, where you've got expensive houses on green belts, in order to bring people in and regenerate those green belts, I think we're going to see a new type of social housing, or new type of council estate that's going to be in the green belt. And part of that reshaping of a review of the green belts is going to be, actually, if you put the infrastructure in place, then people won't need a car. So the argument, the quid pro quo against keeping green belts will be, well, actually, there's going to be less need for a car because there's going to be more infrastructure around, therefore more public transport solutions, therefore the green belt is no longer needed. Ultimately, what will happen is, once there are new council estates or there's new social housing, as we saw, by the way, in the 60s, if we take London, for example, and we look at the council estates that were built in St John's Wood or Maida Vale, what that did initially was it brought down the price of the expensive houses that were in the same area, but ultimately it then pulled up the value of the social housing value of the council estates. And when there was the right to buys in the 80s, so those tenants made a very lot of money. Okay, and I think that we'll start to see the same kind of pattern from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s repeat itself if there is a change of government in 12 to 15 months' time. Before I move on, any questions on
well, I've got a question here regarding the high streets.
Yeah.
So, and I can relate to this because my local council, Leicester City Council, very recently came out and said that they're broke, they've got no money. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're not the only ones. It's happening all over the place.
Mm.
The town centres that you mentioned up in the northwest, none of them were particularly big. Hale, Lee, Altrincham, they're all reasonably kind of small towns. So
Yeah.
in theory, it makes a lot of sense. But do they have the resources to regenerate? And is it a bit of a gamble of where you go as to who's going to do it well and who's not? I mean, I can't remember the name of the place, but it's down in Surrey. It's a really kind of rich area, built up loads of hotels and apartments and everything else. Can't shift them.
Yeah.
So how would an investor tell apart what's a good gamble and what's a bad gamble in that regard?
So let me get back to what I was saying before, which is that what you do is you follow the money. Okay, so you don't go and put your money in ahead of the local authority investing in an unloved town centre or city centre. So, for example, Cannock is a place that I know. Okay, Cannock have just CPO'd most of that town centre, but that project's been put on hold. So why would you go and put your money into Cannock when the local authorities got their projects on hold? So once the local authority has started spending money, and so their money goes in first, that's when you then follow it. You don't do it ahead of what the local authority is doing.
You're still going to be able to get a good deal on property there.
Yeah, of course, because even then even when the local authority is spending money, you've got a whole time of disruption and uncertainty.
Okay. I think it would be good to rack your brains and get a list of these places. We'll publish it out to members for a fee, 50 quid, and we'll give you your town.
Okay, so does that make sense before I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. So I've talked a lot about this already, which is that developing property and being in property is like any other business. You're playing a margin game. You buy well, you build well, you refurb well, you renovate well, you can sell well. And so I believe that there's a window now, and now is the time to trade. And don't be scared. People shouldn't be scared about making sensible offers on aggressive offers on opportunities, because we see that our customers are buying incredibly well. So this month, I take November. We're not finished November. We've got one day of trading left. This month has been our best ever month of trading for new business. We've never had a better month than this month in our history, because again, that's what customers are doing. What you tend to find is when there is, again, a countercyclical environment, when times are tougher, those people that have stayed out of the market because if things have been too high and too pricey, this is the time when they come to town. This is the time when they come to play. And so we're seeing that the quality of projects, the quality of our customers is better than it's ever been. Okay. Any questions before I move on from that? I've covered most of that.
Oh, no, I've got Peter in the chat that I'm still trying to work out if he's being ironic or not. But
what's he said? No, not at all, Anthony. We opted out of all that nasty Brussels-based irony in 2016, so there's nothing ironic about the forthcoming Renaissance. Although maybe that's a bit foreign of the British.
The one is the one above that says, "Surely now we've taken back control, and then we will have an economic boom just around the corner." Which,
yeah, I think it's all about, look, it's all about that the economy. I think that a changing government, a changing party leading it will all be about constructing and building our way out of what's challenging economic times, because we know that there is a need for new housing, a need for a solution to the current crisis.
yes, well, the successive governments since the 80s have handed this housing crisis to one another and kicked the can down the road. The only way out of it is development, is more housing.
Yeah,
it's not you know, squeezing private landlords and saying no one can make any money out of this. Even if you're providing quality housing, we'd sooner have the properties bloody sat there dilapidated and empty. It's got to be investment. So at some point, someone's got to do it, and I completely agree with you. I think that's going to be the focus. That is going to be the main thing on the table at the next election.
And once that happens, then people will rush back into property, and it'll be harder to buy well. So again, coming back to it, there is a window of opportunity, in my opinion, which is now. Okay, so moving on, this is just some of the things that we're seeing as a business that people are doing. Hotels becoming resi, pubs becoming resi or mixed use, care homes shutting down because of the Care Quality Commission, the restrictions that they're placing around non-purpose built care homes. So, and again, in terms of the product that you're creating, because there is this chronic shortage of property, and because again, mortgage rates, particularly buy-to-lets, have gone up, we are seeing that there is demand for multi-tenanted properties, so HMOs, multi-unit freehold blocks. And the reason why that is because, first of all, there's demand from people that want to occupy good quality stock, number one. But number two, from a landlord's perspective, a single tenant void on a multi-tenanted property will not affect your ability to pay your buy-to-let mortgage. Okay, because those properties are much higher yielding. Okay, so multi-tenanted properties where a single tenant void will not impact your ability to pay your mortgage, those are attractive in a higher interest rate environment. Make sense?
We've seen that for the last year.
Agreed. Okay, so right, next slide. So I've talked about this before, which is where to put your money. One of the things really important is that when you are, and again, this will probably resonate with some of the people on this call, when you are doing a residential mortgage or a buy-to-let mortgage, it's a transactional, it's a transaction that takes place, and you service that every single month through a direct debit. Okay, where you are doing a bridging loan, a single bullet bridging loan, where you borrow an amount on day one and you repay that toward at the end of that term. Again, you don't necessarily need a strong relationship with your lender. Okay, but where you are doing a development project of any sort where you are taking drawdowns through the life of that loan, because the lender is funding that project, the relationship that you have with that lender and you understanding how that lender operates and how that lender releases its drawdowns to you is absolutely key, because it's much more of a relationship that you need to build with the lender, and the lender needs to build with you in order to see that your project is successful. Okay, so always keep lines of communication firmly open with a lender, because if there's help that you need in a refurb project, a renovation project, a build project, the lender is much more likely to help you if they are aware of the challenges that you're facing as those challenges happen. Okay, and so that relationship that you build is absolutely of key importance. So how do you choose a lender to partner with? Okay, and what are the questions that you should be asking yourself or your broker when you're looking to choose a lender? So, don't be scared or intimidated or think it's inappropriate to ask questions like, how big is that? Let me just move this out of the way. 1 second. There we go. So how big is the lender? Working with a big lender, a really big lender, you are likely not to be that important to the lender, and number one. And number two, it is very likely that there will be no ownership of you as a customer in that bigger organization. Okay, a smaller lender is likely to be much closer to you and want to build a relationship with you because you are a much bigger stakeholder in their business. Number one. Number two, look into the background of the owners of the lender and the underwriters that are at the lender. Ask questions about them and their background. Are they, for example, property developers themselves? Well, if they're property developers themselves, then there'll be pros and cons of being property developers. A pro will be that they might be able to advise you and hold your hand. The con might be that actually if something goes wrong, rather than them wanting you and funding you and backing you to knife and fork your way through if there's a problem, actually they can much more easily step in and finish the job themselves. So you have less control over the future direction of the project if something happens. Where does their money come from? So it is likely that if a lender is backed by banks and building societies and blue chip institutions, that they would have been due diligence, that those firms would have gone through them and every part of them, what they do and how they do it, because they won't want their money going to a company where either there is a risk that they might lose it, number one, or there's a risk from a reputational perspective. So look at where their money comes from. If their money comes from high net worth or family offices or hedge funds, okay, and the lender is not accountable to an external third party necessarily, or it is likely, not definitely, but it's likely that they will behave in a different way from one which is institutionally backed. Okay, so ask questions about where their money comes from. Ask questions about the process that the lender will go through for you to get your drawdowns. One of the things that's often important on a development is that subbers and contractors need to be paid on a Friday. So how quickly can you get your money from that lender? What's the process you need to go through? Some of the lenders, and this often is the case with, or it certainly used to be the case with some of the peer-to-peer lenders, some of those lenders, when you want a drawdown, they will stick it on their website and try and get money in. Well, what if the money doesn't come from from their investors for your drawdown? What then happens to you? How do you pay your contracts, and how do you pay materials, and how do you continue with your site? So understand that process as to how you get your money on an ongoing basis for the success of your project. Cash is king, liquidity is king on a development project. What happens if you need more time or more money? How will that lender behave? What process do they go through? Do you see, for example, how many defaulted loans have they got? How many properties have they repossessed? How many customers have they defaulted? Ask those questions. Ask those questions of the broker. Ask those questions of the lender, and you'll start to get a picture of the type of organization that you are dealing with. Sometimes it will be right for you to have this type of lender. Sometimes it'll be right for you to have that type of lender, but you need to make your own judgments as to what type of business you feel comfortable with, working with. Okay. So that's the kind of, doing your due diligence on a lender. And by the way, some of these questions you can ask of the lender directly. Some of the questions you're going to answer through looking at Companies House. Some of these, if you are working through a broker, you should be asking your broker these questions, to ask the broker to find these things out for you.
I've got a question here about the size of the company. So you mentioned, obviously, there's some benefits of using a smaller lender. One would imagine that there are benefits of using a larger lender as well.
Yeah.
Having more of a personal relationship, being more important to someone smaller can work to your advantage. I can absolutely understand that. Now, small and big, there are relative concepts. You mentioned earlier on that Roma have got 55 employees. Well, that's not small, is it? That's kind of a medium size. So
yeah. I'm presenting this to people for them to ask the questions as to what they feel comfortable with. So Roma is not the nirvana for every single case, for every single customer. There will be some people that will absolutely want to work with a 1 or 2 man band because that will feel right to them. There'll be some people that say, do you know what, I want to deal with Barclays because I know they're never going to run out of money ever. So it's all about where the person feels comfortable. I'm not trying to say that because Roma's an SME, we're a mid-sized company, that we therefore fit the bill for every project. But I'm trying to paint a picture as to the questions that somebody should be asking of the, because essentially, if you think about it, a lender on a development project, if they're funding 75% or 80% or 85% of your costs, they are your major stakeholder. They are your major stakeholder, and you're gonna want to get that money on the drip. So how do you get it? Where does that money come from? What happens if, like 25% or 30% of our projects do, it takes longer, or certainly more recently, or until recently, I should say, particularly because of COVID, it costs a load more. What support is there available? How did that lender behave during COVID? What do they do with their customers? These are all questions that you as a borrower should be asking.
So what's stopping you from firing half your staff?
Why on earth would I want to do that?
Because a smaller lender means that you'll be able to have a better relationship with your clients. There's got to be an advantage to being bigger as well, right?
So the advantage for being bigger is, first of all, you're not going to attract the cheaper institutional money if you're small. Okay, so therefore it becomes cheaper for your customers to borrow from you if you are able to source cheaper funding as a business.
So you yourselves become more important within the money markets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are. It tends to be with the smaller lenders, it will tend to be more expensive, not always, but it can be. With the bigger lenders, it should be cheaper. So from our perspective, if I think about our business, we've got 14 people in sales, we've got 10 people in underwriting, and it's all around trying to give that customer, experience, that customer journey, the best possible experience they can have. So if I say to you a different way, a customer on a development project or a refurb project will be with our sales team for 2 weeks. They'll be with our underwriting team for 4 to 6 weeks, but they'll be with our customer service team and drawdown team for 12 to 18 months. Okay, so when you think about the investment that we make in our business is in order that our customer's journey is as good and as seamless and as stress-free as it can possibly be, so that they will want to have a good experience and they'll want to come back with the next project.
Is that a question you can ask then? Is about retention rates of how many customers come back? Because surely that's hugely important.
Massive. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll add that to my next presentation, Anthony. That's a great question. Thank you.
Well, I wish I could take credit for it, but I didn't come up with it. I just read it.
Okay. So what does a Roma borrower look like? We've got what we call a Roma persona. Okay, we've got essentially 2 types of Roma personas. We've got Roma persona number 1 is somebody who we believe is technically competent at doing property. So they might be they've done previous development projects for themselves, or they might have been involved in previous development projects for other people. But they might be a chippy, a sparky, a plumber, a bricky, a ground worker or a QS or a project manager that's seen projects through working for other people, all they want to have a go themselves. So from our perspective, a competent property professional is a good person to back at the start of their journey. Okay, so that is Roma persona number 1. Roma persona number 2 is somebody who is successful in another field and wants to have a go at doing property. So we do lots of business with pilots and surgeons and dentists and doctors, and we've done a former finance director from Boots and someone senior within Tesco's, because they are successful in the field. They're often, not always, but often high earners. They've got assets in the background, but most importantly, they can they have got a good team of professionals around them, number 1. And number 2, we know that because of them being successful in the field, if something does go wrong, we can sit around the table and we can work our way through to knife and forking through in order to have a positive outcome at the end for the customer and obviously for ourselves as well. So those really are the two Roma personas that we look to work with. So again, what we're looking for, number one, how likely are you to achieve your objectives? Are you going to make money? It's really, really, really important to us that our customers make money. We want to see them be successful. We want to see them make money. Do we feel that we can work with you if something goes wrong to resolve any issues? And again, if I think that we've lent £500 million over the last 3 years or so, we've only had to step in and repossess once out of those 500 million. It was 2,500 transactions. So are we right for each other? We will be transparent with our customers, and we expect and we want our customers to be the same with us. Okay, so that's what we look for. So we will do due diligence on our customers or applicants to see whether they fit into the Roma personas. So is it a good, are they good people I'd like to be successful? Is it a project we want to back? Are they people we want to back? And are our customers likely to make money? And then a real quickie, what's new in our business? And this is just a real flavour, and you can probably tell I don't work in sales. We'll do desktop valuations on what we call standard bridging. 80% of our completions happen within 28 days. We will, and we are not, we're not expensive. We're certainly at the cheaper end of the market. Okay. Anything else? Let me then just wrap up. Any questions? And we look forward to working with LMPG's customers. And thank you for everyone's time today.
Thank you, Scott. Well, can we just pop back to the previous slide? I just want to mention, it's always shocked me, the light development side of your business. Up to 50% of the property value, and you still consider it to be a light development, which is crazy. Yeah, brilliant. So look, any questions, please pop them in the chat. We've got a chat function at the bottom. I'm just going to say very quickly, I don't know whether when you type in, it says it's got a 2. So if it's got my name there, can you swap that to everyone? Because I've got a few people that are sending it directly to me. So I'm assuming that they're doing it for privacy reasons. The only problem that we've got with that is that means that I'll be asking all the questions, and Scott's going to keep complimenting me on my brilliant questions, and I will take credit for them. So I'm going to kind of work backwards through the last few that we've got. So the first one here, we were talking about how to research a lender. And there was God knows how many bullet points about asking this and asking that and asking the other, which is all fantastic information. But is there a way of getting what they say to you independently verified? So for instance, you mentioned the amount of, oh, here we go. Yes, I'll stop pretending to remember. Here we go. The amount of repossessions that they've done over the last 12 months. Yeah. They could say to you, well, we've not done one. But is there a way of checking that?
Yeah, there is actually. There is actually. So the vast majority of lenders will now lend to limited companies. Okay. And so you can... It's not, it is, I'm going to run this through. So you can do a search. Can you do this? I know that I'm hesitating because I know that we can do it. But let me just say what we can do for a second, and people can work out whether they can do it themselves, right? We can do a search at Companies House for all of the cases that I don't know, where Barclays have got a charge at Companies House. Okay, so most of our lending is to limited companies. We can search every single company where Barclays have got a charge. Okay, and then you can then go and see how many of those companies are in receivership.
So you can search that with...
I don't know whether other people can or not. It's a tool that we've got in our business.
Okay, fine. And in terms of anything else within this list, are there
Yeah.
ways, or is it just kind of counting on?
You can you can do LinkedIn searches to see how many people work in an organization. That's relatively easy because most employees nowadays will be on LinkedIn. In terms of their funding lines, you can do again searches at Companies House to see where which companies have got debentures over the lender. You can look at the kind of overall group structure of the organization, and then you can see where there are debentures in favour of other people over that business. So you can see where the money actually comes from, banks and building societies, or just high net worth individuals. I say how you can also do this, by the way. A lot of lenders will do what's called a subcharge. Okay, so if you do a search, I don't know, on lender XYZ, okay, and you look at the charges register, you will see from the charges register if they are granting a third party who funds them a subcharge, and that will then list all of the properties that they have lent against publicly on the public record. And then you can see by searching those companies, you can see whether those companies are in administration or liquidation or whatever, and that will give you a flavour as to what they've repossessed. And that is public information, a long way around doing it if you've not got the tools to do it automatically like we have.
No. Okay, no, that makes sense. So there are ways of verifying that independent information without kind of having to trust the snake oil salesman, or let's say snake oil salespeople, because why not? So staying on this page, actually, I'm just going to move up very slightly. You mentioned within about midway down there, banks and building societies, high net worth individuals, that kind of thing. You said earlier on that depending on where the money comes from, the lender is likely to act in a different way. Now, what do you mean by that? Have you got any examples of?
Yeah. So the most important thing is to understand how the lender behaves if there is a problem and you need help. So you need more time or you need more money. Okay. What are the fees? What are the charges? So, for example, some lenders, when the loan comes to the end of its term, they're what they call their discounted rate, okay, which is typically in the market at the moment roughly 1% a month. Okay, that discounted rate often will go to, it steps up to 2% a month or 3% a month. Well, that's expensive. Okay, so that's how a lot of the industry works. Now, if some lenders, what they will do, by the way, we don't do that, but I should say that we don't do that, but that's what a lot of lenders do. Now, what a lot of lenders will do, some of the more unscrupulous ones, is that 2% a month or 3% a month, they will then apply that rate from the start of the loan. Okay, so instead of you paying 1% a month for the term, you're all of a sudden retrospectively being charged from day one 2% a month or 3% a month. Okay, so people should watch out for that trick. Watch out for that tripwire.
That's interesting. That is not a retention-based business.
No, it's not. No. So again, how many customers are repeat customers? You'll do social media searches on the lender. Okay, you might want to say, right, okay, I'm based in Leeds, or I'm based in Milton Keynes, or I'm based wherever I'm based. Have you got 2 or 3 customers in the area that I can talk to? I want to reference. You want to reference me, do due diligence on me. I want to speak to some of your existing customers. I want them to tell me what the experience is like in my local area.
Do you get that question often?
Yeah, and we're happy. We run events for our customers to go to together. You've been to one of them recently.
Yeah, I was there last week. Yeah.
And look how our customers enjoy the experience of working with us. We've been working with us for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, you're not only that, you're here tonight as well. So if we wanted someone to jump in and double foot you, then I'm sure they would have done by now. Okay, well, look, I'm going to jump over. So can we move over to the final slide, just your contact details on? I've got a final question here. And then, here we go. and there's a massive one that's come through which Laura can read while I ask you this one. You were talking about the interest rates right at the beginning. Now, this member has very wisely pointed out that the interest rates in rising, what the government had said was that was to tackle inflation. Inflation was at something like 11.6%. Now it's down to 2 or 3%. I don't know exactly.
4.6.
4.6 is it?
Yeah.
Right. So we're not there yet, but it has dropped dramatically. Now at this point, it's a question of steadying the ship. How can you be sure that the next step is to bring them back down, rather than if it's taken this long to actually get to where we are now, why would they reverse those decisions?
So do you want a short answer or the long answer? I kind of feel that I have to probably start with a short one and kind of go into a
Let's
long
go with
one.
a short one, and depending on how much I understand, we might be here all night.
When the Bank of England made their last decision, it's always useful to read the accompanying notes that go with that decision. Okay. And the reason why they made the decision that they made was because they were still concerned that wages were rising, particularly in the service sector, faster, okay, than the 4.6% inflation. Okay. Wages were rising. So they had to keep interest rates higher in order to discourage firms from giving big pay rises. So we have seen, because of the slowdown, we've seen that service businesses have not been giving big pay rises. So, for example, PwC, as I said, were laying off people last week. KPMG this week announced that for all 12,000 of their staff, there will be no pay rises this year. Okay, so we're starting to see that firms are, again, because of the uncertainty in the current economic climate, that it's not that the gravy train's gone. That ship has sailed. So firms are, even though inflation is 4.6%, cost of living crisis, etc., firms are highly unlikely to be giving their staff big pay rises as they have been doing over the past 2 years in particular.
And that's where it links back to the unemployment rate that you were saying.
It all links back to unemployment. Once we start to see unemployment rise, which we are very likely to see over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, we will then start to see the Bank of England reducing base rates in order to stimulate the economy and growth and investment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, what do you know? I actually understood it. So, Laura, I'm assuming that you've been reading through this long comment as we've been talking. Do you want to fire the final question over? And then I'm sure everyone is going to shoot off and watch the end of Leicester City versus Sheffield Wednesday. I know we've all been anticipating that one.
It was more of their experience with Lloyd's, but there was some very useful information regarding the due diligence. When they were going through the cash squeeze last year, they had no confidence whatsoever that Lloyd's Bank Business Call Centre, who they've dealt with for 3 generations, that they would call in. So, and just for reference back to earlier, they were being maybe just a little bit ironic with their previous.
I detected it. Look, that's exactly as Scott was saying earlier. It gets to a point where you're so big, you're a household name, that really, I mean, what high street bank has good customer service at this point? It does not exist. So to go with a name that you trust, a brand that you trust for something as personal as development finance, bridging finance, whatever it might be, you know, I wouldn't make that decision myself.
You're absolutely right. There are massive advantages going with a big bank because you get the cheapest rates, but you become a far less significant piece in their business. You know, you are not really a stakeholder in Lloyd's Bank's business, even though you've been with them for 3 generations.
Well, look, on that Lloyd's demolishing notes, we've certainly shown them who's boss. I'd like to say thank you, Scott, for joining us tonight. I know you've got a very hungry employee downstairs waiting to have dinner with, so we shan't keep you any longer. Guys, I think that this, and I'm again not entirely sure, but I think that this was our last expert lock-in of 2023. Thanks for sticking with us through the ride. It's not been a fantastic journey at some of the times for the private rental market, and it looks like we're in for a little bit more of that next year. But there is a silver lining. There is a window of opportunity, which has been kind of, I guess, fully researched. There's been a lot more thought into that than a lot of people's estimations, even though, as Peter says, economic predictions are always a bit of a gamble. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will see you again in 2024. But if you do want to speak to us before then, well, guess what? We're still knocking around for all of December. Pick up the phone, jump on our Facebook group, everything else. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good night.